Today I have the matchup that nobody asked for. Yuta Okkotsu, the special grade beast, versus Chrollo Lucilfer, the leader of the Phantom Troop. A while ago I made a post asking you guys who is the best copycat in anime, and obviously the copycat ninja himself, Kakashi, won, but fighting for second place were Yuta and Chrollo. It got me thinking, are those two really that close? One is a monster second only to Gojo, according to many people in verse. While Chrollo is very smart, he hasn't really fought on that level, until he fought Hisoka, but even then he was more showing off his powers to the audience than really fighting him. I originally was going to follow one of my favorite YouTubers, Broken Ronin's path, of why blank isn't close, but the more I looked into it, the more I think this is actually a pretty even fight. So, I'm going to prove to you and myself why Yuta versus Chrollo is actually close. Spoilers for JJK and Hunter x Hunter. Let's start with their physical abilities, looking at their strength, speed, and durability. Okay, I'm not smart, so there's not going to be any like numbers and math to get the exact blah blah blah, but looking at their feats and comparing it should make sense, hopefully. We're going to start by looking at Yuta first. Yuta himself stated that he lacks the physical capabilities of people like Yuji and Maki, but he uses curse energy to compensate. This allows him to punch crater-sized holes and throw cars. Yuta can easily slice through curses no problem, but curses don't really have a consistent durability scale. In the manga, grade 4 curses are said to be defeated with a baseball bat, while special grades take about cluster bombs, and that might work. Seeing that Yuta was dominating his fight against Koroshi, the special grade cockroach thing, it shows his strength pretty well. He also ripped a steel railing with ease and even knocked out Chozo with just one hit. So yeah, Yuta is also fast enough to keep up with Yuji, who can run 50 meters in 3 seconds and even dodge Chojo's blood attack that can reach up the speeds of sound. Not to mention Yuta did this with his weapon drawn. While fighting Geto, a seasoned sorcerer, Yuta was able to speed blitz him and surprise him. It was a bit of a stretch, but Yuji was barely able to keep up with Maki with their fight against Sukuna. After her awakening, she can move as fast as Noya's projection sorcery. So maybe that means Yuta can reach that level too? Maybe, it's all speculation there. His reaction speed is pretty impressive too, as he saw him reacting to surprise attacks from Takako and using his environment to dodge Ryu's energy beams. Looking at Yuta's durability, he is able to tank blasts that obliterate buildings and even space warping attacks. Ryu compared punching Yuta to hitting a water tank. This is also in part of his reverse curse technique, but more on that later. Alright, let's look at Chrollo now. Chrollo's strength is pretty hidden, and in normal Hunter x Hunter fashion, it's more about technique than just raw strength, so I have to find the subtle details. Chrollo is able to pierce through skulls with just a pen, pretty solo, right? While pretending to be Neon Noshiai's bodyguard, he incapacitated her with a single chop. It was said that much strength, he could have easily beheaded her, so it takes a lot of skill to restrain. For the last piece of actual evidence of his strength, Chrollo threw people off a balcony several meters away at Hisoka during their fight, which is actually a pretty impressive feat. Now we go into speculation territory. It was stated that in the manga, Chrollo was ranked 7th in the Phantom Troop arm wrestling competition. This may seem like a low placement, but it's higher than Nobunaga, who was able to hold Gon in place and beat him in arm wrestling multiple times, only losing when Gon's aura spiked, similar to Uvagen. Even though arm wrestling is seen as a contest of strength, it's really more about technique and utilization, but it's anime, so let's just say strength. This puts Chrollo's strength slightly above a base Gon, who's able to push open the Zoldyck 4-ton gate, lift and throw stone tiles, and shatter rock pillars. Chrollo is really agile too, quick enough to react, block, and avoid Silva and Xena Zoldyck's attack, who are both highly trained assassins. It is also important to mention that he did this with no intention of killing or really even counter-attacking. According to Pakunda, Chrollo only needs 0.2 to 0.3 seconds to react to an attack. And I guess she's a reliable source since she's in the Phantom Troop, but she might be a bit biased there. Remember that neck chap I mentioned earlier? Chrollo was able to do this while in a room filled with guards without anybody noticing. He's also fast enough to react to Nobunaga lunging at Hisoka in a fraction of a second, managing to teleport him away. Chrollo fighting the Zoldyck assassins proved his durability is pretty high, only getting small cuts in the battle. The Phantom Troop leader was able to tank Silva's floor-destroying attack. Even though Silva himself said that Chrollo was nearly dead, it's more accurate to say that he's perfectly fine. He was more upset about not stealing their Nen abilities than from actually losing the fight. So, first impressions. It really looks like Yuta takes the physical category. He just has more feats and strength, and his output seems incredibly over Chrollo's. Speaking of, Chrollo's reaction speed and baseline strength shows that he definitely has survivability, but I'm gonna give Yuta the point. Let's start looking at the next category. Being strong and able to lift heavy things is great, but there's more to fighting than just raw power. Intelligence, smarts, battle IQ, whatever you call it, having a brain will save you when it comes to fighting. In this category, we'll look at Yuta and Chrollo's intelligence, battle IQ, and fighting skills. Chrollo up first this time. Chrollo is actually very capable in the fight. We bring it back to the Zoldyck fight, like we always do, where he was aware of his openings and then accounted for them. He was even able to scratch Silva with his bend knife, which no average fighter could do. That knife has enough toxin to paralyze a whale, which means Chrollo needs enough skill to handle it properly without getting cut himself. But let's get to Chrollo's bread and butter, strategic thinking. This gothic boy band member has a plan for everything and can predict future events with scarily accurate results with just his planning. Like the time Chrollo tricked the Mafia and more importantly Kurapika into thinking all the Phantom Troop members were dead, leading the person who killed Uvagin, Kurapika, off their trail. And into depression. That was a really sad few chapters and episodes there. On the same day, he was able to infiltrate Neon Nostrad's group and act as a bodyguard, which easily allowed him to steal her Nen ability. Chrollo used Hisoka's bloodlust to pull him along, creating enough time for Chrollo to gather specific powers to defeat Hisoka. This doesn't take account his battle IQ. Chrollo is really good at thinking on his feet and can change his plan of attack in a moment depending on the situation. Even as a kid, he was really smart, knowing at least 3 different languages and while also being able to script out entire shows for his friends. Yuta is a way simpler person though, no offense. Even though we haven't seen him solving puzzles or taking tests or even speaking more than one language, Yuta and most characters in JJK are incredibly smart when it comes to fighting. He was trained in swordplay by Maki, one of the most skilled fighters in the verse, and during the 2v1 fight in the Colon games, Yuta was in control for most of the fight, proving his skills not only in swordplay but hand-to-hand combat as well. Even though their exchange was brief, Yuji kept up with Yuji's insane skills and effectively killed him. Maybe it's due to his curse technique, but Yuta is very observant and he can grasp how other techniques work just by seeing them a few times. This allows him to dodge and cover with counterattacks extremely quickly. Basically, put Yuta in a fight and with enough time, he'll come up with a strategy. An easy way of looking at this is thinking of the 2 types of thinking, analytic and intuitive. Analytic thinking is Chrollo's specialty as it involves logical and fact-based thought process. It thrives with rational thinking as Chrollo's emotions rarely get in his way in planning. Analytic thinking does take more time to enact, while intuitive thinking is more subjective and in the moment. It's more effective when a person has more experience they can pull from. Good thing about finding curses all the time means Yuta has built up a lot of experience, and he's pretty intuitive. Okay, I can't keep stalling though. Chrollo has Yuta beat 5 times over when it comes to intelligence. It's like comparing Aizen to Luffy. Okay, it's not that extreme, but you get the idea. Point goes to Chrollo. The third and final category, powers. Their copy abilities prove to be very powerful in their own verse. Well, technically Chrollo steals Nen abilities, but same thing. We're going to look at what both fighters are capable of and finally see who wins a battle. Yuta has an immense amount of curse energy, which is the power source of his hand strength and durability to his body and katana. It also powers one of Yuta's more helpful abilities, reverse curse technique. This allows him to heal from serious injury, even to the point of regeneration. This is what helps Yuta stay in a fight for such a long time. It can even be used on other people. But these parlor tricks are not the reason why he is a special grade sorcerer. You have his little girlfriend Rika to thank for that. Rika is a cursed spirit and Yuta's innate technique, which happens to be very different from everyone else's techniques. Rika is a Shikigami that can either be partially or completely manifested. Partially summoned Rika usually appears when Yuta is in trouble or needs help. That's right, Rika can appear on her own and has her own sense of individuality and can act independently from Yuta's actions, even though she usually follows orders. A partially manifested Rika is strong enough to hold Yuji in place and destroy a bridge with just one punch. She also tanked the same building destroying attacks that Yuta did. Basically a bodyguard in this form. However, when she is fully manifested, her true capabilities are revealed. Yuta needs his ring to make a connection to fully summon a complete Rika. This allows him to have access to curse techniques, weapons, and limitless curse energy that Yuta can use to refill his own, like a battery. Though Yuta has to be careful because this full connection only lasts for about 5 minutes at a time. While fully manifested, Yuta has access to his famed copy ability that can replicate curse techniques, even innate ones. The condition to copy a technique is unknown though. It was implied that Yuta copied Takako's technique when Rika ate her arm, but he was able to copy Inumaki's curse speech without doing anything like that, so it's still a pretty big mystery to how the copy works. Speaking of, this is a great time to talk about the techniques that Yuta has copied and can use. Like I mentioned before, curse speech is his earliest copied ability, which reinforces Yuta's words with curse energy. This forces the listeners to act or be acted upon wherever he's said. Next we have the Shikigami technique. This allows Yuta to use his hair as a medium and create small, flying, bat-like Shikigami. They fly around the opponent, making a small domain, slashing everyone in it. Finally, Yuta has sky manipulation, which allows him to make the sky a tangible surface, allowing him to distort space, which makes redirecting attacks simple. Takako was able to fly with it, but we really haven't seen Yuta do that, so we'll see. I need a little breather now because I'm about to talk about Chrollo's powers, and if you ever read Hunter x Hunter, then you've read Hunter x Hunter. It can be a little complex, so I'll try explaining as best as I can so hopefully even I can understand. Chrollo's then ability is called Skill Hunter, Bandit Secrets. This summons a nice book with a hamper on it that allows him to steal other people's abilities. Bandit Secrets is amazing but comes with some very strict conditions. 1. Chrollo has to see the power in action with his own eyes. 2. He has to ask questions about Nen and the victim has to answer. It's not clear what the questions must entail, but it has to be about Nen in some way. 3. The victim has to touch the hamper on the book, and all of this has to be done within an hour. No wonder Chrollo is such a strategic person. His power is so high maintenance, and he messed up and there's no stealing for him. In order to use the stolen ability, he has to keep the book open in his right hand at all times, so he's basically down an arm. But luckily, Chrollo has another ability that helps with that. Double Face Bookmark Theme is a bookmark, that holds the place of the page of any ability. This allows Chrollo to close the book and have access to both his hands and use that ability. He even got smart and figured out if he keeps the bookmark on one page and turns it to another page, he can use 2 abilities at the same time. There are some more small limitations and conditions, but I'll get to that once we talk about the powers. First one up, Indoor Fish. This summons a skeletal fish, or multiple, that can only survive in a completely sealed room. These fish eat human flesh, but the person it eats doesn't feel any pain or bleed, even if they're mortally wounded. When the seal is broken, the fish disappear and all the injuries manifest, usually meaning death. And I thought this kind of reminds you of a domain expansion, right? Kinda. If you squint your eyes, you can see it. Next is Fun Cloth, which creates a cloth that can decrease and increase in size according to Chrollo's will. The cloth can cover something as big as a car and shrink it to fit in the palm of your hand. They also shrink people without causing any harm to them. They revert back to normal once they're let out of the bag. Chrollo has an unknown teleportation ability that was able to teleport Nobunaga away from Hisoka. All we know that it is able to teleport a person without their consent. We don't know how many people it can work on or how far it goes or if Chrollo can even use it on himself. The Sun and the Moon is Chrollo's most destructive ability. When it activates, a sun symbol with a plus in it appears on his left hand, and a moon symbol with a minus in it appears on his right hand. When he touches someone, the mark appears to whoever he places his hand. The symbol that shows depends on which hand he uses. When the 2 symbols touch each other, it will cause an explosion. The marks appear instantly when Chrollo touches the target, but if he holds it for about 3 to 5 seconds, it will trigger an even bigger explosion. This specific Nen ability is special because it overrules one of the limitations of Bandit's secrets. Usually when a person has their ability stolen by Chrollo, if they die, the ability disappears from the book. But if the Nen and emotion is strong enough, the Nen will transcend a person's lifetime and still be active. One more fun fact about the Sun and the Moon. Since it places the marks on both of his hands, it will still be activated when the book is closed. So if he plays his card right, he can have up to 3 abilities at the same time working. Okay, back on track, we have Order Stamp that conjures a stamp when placed on a puppet, allows the user to control it with vocal commands. The commands can't be too complex and it can't go against the beliefs of the puppet. Wait, so you're telling me a puppet has beliefs? Yeah, so long story short, Order Stamp works on inanimate objects only. Chrollo tried to use it on corpses, but since the original owner of the ability didn't see corpses as inanimate, it didn't work. In true Phantom Troop style though, he found a way around this. He used an ability to make Nen copies of the dead bodies, which then constituted that as inanimate. The puppets can be destroyed once their heads are disconnected. Chrollo can control over 200 puppets. Jeez. Okay, we are finally at Chrollo's last ability. There are still 2 powers that are unclear if he still had since the owners died, but to be safe and not to guess, I kept them off the list. Convert Hands causes Chrollo's palms to have symbols on them just like the sun and the moon. The left hand has a white arrow pointing down in a black circle, while the right hand with the black arrow pointing up in a white circle. When he touches someone with his right hand, it causes that person to look like Chrollo. If he touches someone with his left hand, it causes Chrollo to look like that person. Oh my god, explanation time over. This is going to be my longest video yet, but I'm very excited because who wins? See, it's not as easy as you first thought, right? Yuta's brute strength is what most people think would win the day, but Chrollo's fast reflexes and intelligence helps him keep up. And in all honesty, we haven't seen either of these 2 characters struggle really. When they wanted their enemy dead, they died pretty quickly. Both Yuta and Chrollo have some pretty solid win conditions. Yuta's curse speech is a big asset, and I'm sure Chrollo is strong enough to resist the simple die command, but a don't move leaves him wide open for a pummeling. We haven't seen Yuta's domain expansion, so it's not fair to use it, but the domain made by Shikigami technique has a never missing slashing, which Chrollo has never dealt with before. Yuta and Rika's teamwork is the main thing Chrollo needs to work around, as if he decides to focus Yuta, Rika will be right there, and if he tries to focus Rika, Yuta will be right there. Chrollo has some interesting win conditions that require his intelligence. One is using the indoor fish. If Chrollo can keep Yuta in a sealed room, the fish will keep eating at his flesh. This move will in no way kill Yuta, but it does 2 main things. It forces Yuta to use his reverse curse technique to heal, which drains his curse energy very quickly, and it stalls for time, giving Chrollo a chance to strategize. Plus, since the target doesn't really feel any pain when the fish attack, if Chrollo distracts Yuta, there could be some additional damage without Yuta even noticing. The sun and the moon is the ability that can really end things, as he can affix the symbols onto anything, as seen when on the inanimate Nen copies. Chrollo can place the symbols everywhere, creating different traps. The symbols also don't disappear until they explode, so placing them on Rika is actually a pretty good idea, since even if she disappears and comes back, it'll still be on there. If Chrollo places opposing symbols on Yuta and Rika, that'll hinder their teamwork greatly. And on the opposite side, using teleportation to keep Rika away is a pretty good strategy. That was the whole point of Takako and Ryo's goal during the Culling Games. They want to keep Rika as far away as possible. There's one more idea, but it's a bit controversial. Chrollo could possibly use Order Stamp on Rika, or a cursed spirit in general. Since cursed spirits are just negative emotions mixed with cursed energy, it's not a stretch to say that it would work since it uses on Nen copies. If it does work, Chrollo can use it on Rika and tell her to break Yuta. Using the word kill wouldn't do anything because remember, puppets can't do anything that they normally wouldn't do. But turning Rika against Yuta is a game changer. The winner is ultimately decided by who acts first. Yuta is more of a brawler that wants to overwhelm the enemy with his strength and seemingly endless stamina, while Chrollo is an assassin, waiting and lurking for the right moment to strike, then kill. It's safe to say with Nen and curse techniques that Chrollo and Yuta know better than to rush in a fight without knowing the other person's abilities. But it's really hard to say who will win given all the factors. What do you guys think? Does the special grade sorcerer take it, or does strategy win with the Phantom Troop leader? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Alright, peace.